with his mysterious death at 33,000 feet. It's been 5 years now since Dean Moss, an experienced jet pilot, was found dead in the back of an Evergreen Airlines DC-9. Was it an accident, as the government believes, or a high-altitude homicide? Eric Mason has been spending the past 6 months investigating and has our exclusive report.
Departure flighting 250, the wind calm.
In the world of jet planes and jet pilots, the person who sits in the left front seat can be making a life and death decision in a hurry. 5 years ago, pilot Dean Moss of Portland found himself in just that kind of deadly dilemma. Moss died, but the mystery surrounding his death lives on.
It's been very frustrating and upsetting.
Moss's mother, Barbara, and his father, Delmer of Portland, still can't believe the government's version of what happened to their son in a plane hauling weapons for the U.S. military.
We would like to know what really happened, because we feel that if something like that had happened to any of the rest of us, that he wouldn't have left a stone unturned until he found out exactly what happened and why.
After a 2-year investigation, the National Transportation Safety Board ruled that it was Moss's conduct in the cockpit that was, to a great extent, what killed him. But News Center 6 obtained the 550-page NTSB report. It contains a lot of facts, but it also raises a lot of questions. Questions that leave some wondering just what really happened to the promising young pilot from Portland.
The story begins at Hill Air Force Base in Ogden, Utah, February 9th, 1989. Dean Moss was captain of a commercial DC-9 owned by Evergreen Airlines of McMinnville, under contract to haul cargo and weapons for the U.S. military. It seemed like just another freight haul for Moss and his co-pilot Philip Bartish. But just minutes into the flight to Kelly Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas, both knew they were in for real trouble. As Bartish would later tell the NTSB, the plane would not pressurize. Although it was a problem, he would not report to the tower until the flight was nearly over more than an hour later. Co-pilot Bartish also told investigators that Moss ordered him to take control of the airplane and told him to climb to 33,000 feet. At the same time, Bartish says Moss left the cockpit with an oxygen tank known as a walk-around bottle to investigate the pressure problem in the back of the plane. Unknown to both crew members, a maintenance worker had left a small hatch door ajar in the cargo area before takeoff. Bartish told investigators he had argued to return the plane to the runway they just left, but Moss was firm. The flight would go on. This was the first explanation by federal investigators about what happened next.
When he didn't return to the cockpit after 20 minutes, the first officer became very concerned and declared an emergency to air traffic control.
Investigators told reporters those facts in a news conference in the days after the incident. But later, NTSB investigators found a disturbing set of contradictions. Among them, the time factor. Based on the flight data recorder and estimations of an expert hired by the NTSB, Bartish did not wait 20 minutes before calling an emergency, but 61 minutes. Bartish told investigators he knew the walk-around bottle held only 20 minutes of air. Bartish, who is now a pilot with United Airlines in Houston, declined an on-camera interview about the flight. But he told us by telephone he lost track of the time because he was flying the plane by himself. Bartish, who told investigators he was intimidated by Moss's autocratic behavior, said he wished he'd never followed Moss's orders to climb to 33,000 feet. Bartish says he agrees with the NTSB that it was the lack of oxygen that killed his colleague. But he told us the only mystery was Moss's bizarre behavior. Other jet pilots, though, say they're troubled by the time factor.
And there's just too many unexplained things there that just don't make any sense.
Rich Morris, a private jet pilot for a Portland hotel chain, says he's troubled by the Moss case for a number of reasons.
Being gone for 60 minutes is just, there's something wrong. I mean, in 5 minutes, you're questioning what's going on. 10 minutes, you're reacting to something. There's something wrong. That isn't that big an airplane to take that big a walk in. And I mean, that's why it's still a mystery.
Morris knew Moss personally. They flew charter flights together for a small company that would later become Horizon Air. Few questioned Moss's flying ability, but NTSB investigators found Moss did have trouble getting along in the cockpit. Records from his job at Horizon showed he was fired as a troublemaker. As it turns out, when the plane landed in Lubbock, Texas, an hour and 32 minutes after the flight began, emergency crews found Moss in the back of the Evergreen DC-9 unconscious. He died just a short time later. Justice of the Peace L.J. Blaylock of Lubbock would rule that his death was homicide in the weeks following the incident. He still believes it.
Well, I ruled that way. I ruled homicide. And I've seen nothing that would change my mind.
Blaylock says he used a number of factors to arrive at the homicide ruling. First, he saw the body himself and suspected Moss may have been poisoned before he ever got on the plane.
And I saw the stomach lining, and according true to what Dr. Erdman said, it appeared to me that the stomach lining was just a bunch of hamburger meat. Some caustic agent had caused that.
Blaylock, now retired, cited with pathologist Ralph Erdman that Moss died from massive bleeding into the stomach from some unknown caustic agent, a finding supported by another Texas lab. But Evergreen officials who've reviewed the case say they doubt there was any foul play.
I mean, are you satisfied that all the questions have been answered about it?
Yeah, I'm really satisfied with it.
Evergreen's Penn store says there should be no mystery behind this death at all.
Dean Moss was a very, very good pilot. He was a very aggressive pilot. He was really mission-oriented. He really wanted to get things done. He wanted to continue on. He wanted to get to the destination. I think that mission completion, he was flying for LAGA, Logistics Air Command, which is a military pattern that we fly. To complete that was kind of foremost in his mind when he, rather than turn around and land, which I think we would all agree would be the prudent thing to do, that he wanted to continue on. And I think he put himself into a position that was fatal.
Storr says he questions the coroner's findings. Erdman later pleaded no contest to 7 counts of falsifying autopsies. But questions remain besides those raised in the autopsy. Among them, how could Moss die from a lack of oxygen when his body was found with an oxygen mask around his face? Experts later tested the bottle and found it full and fully operational. And how could the co-pilot survive and operate the plane in the bone-chilling cold, estimated at 25 degrees below zero?
The inconsistencies in his death have raised legitimate questions.
News Center 6 provided former airline pilot and consultant Gary Idle the complete NTSB investigative file. Idle says when Moss failed to return to the cockpit within a few short minutes, Bardish, as the acting captain, should have declared an emergency and started rapid descent. Even Evergreen officials say they instruct crew members to return to the airport when the craft will not pressurize. Investigators were puzzled at the conclusion of their probe. In the words of investigator Ray Wall, we still have something of a dilemma here. All the while, the Moss family wonders what happened to the investigation.
We sit right here and we're in line with the takeoff at the airport. We can see every plane that takes off, and every plane that takes off, our mind goes to Dean. It is devastating to people to lose a son and then be lied to.
Eric Mason joins us now. And Eric, you said NTSB took 2 years to investigate this. Why didn't they just automatically turn it over to the FBI?
It could be a question of an investigation that just fell through the cracks, just didn't get off the ground. I talked with the FBI agent in Texas that was in charge at the time, and he was wondering why he didn't get a copy of the final report the NTSB had finished. When I told him about the story we were working on, he was interested in seeing it, and he wondered why he hadn't seen it before. We also understand congressional investigators are interested in looking at our story. Shirley?
Okay, well, somebody has died, and that is a tragedy, and we feel for the family, but why would Congress and the FBI be interested in his death? What's so important about it?
We talked with the judge about that, and the judge still thinks today that perhaps the plane was carrying some sort of classified cargo, that in fact that it may have been bound for the Contras in South America. You remember that 60 Minutes did a piece on Evergreen several years ago that talked about the fact that some of the weapons that were being shipped ended up in the hands of the Contras, and the judge suspects that there may be some tie-in.
Sounds like some John Grisham novel, doesn't it? You'll be following it, too.
That's right.
Thank you, Eric.
Today's top stories include a chemical spill that closed a freeway. An update on that I-5 mess coming up next from News Center 6.